The Appalachian Mountains hold many secrets. Some are buried in the soil, others echo through the trees, and some are carried on the wind. It begins with a sound, a long, piercing wail, so sharp it cuts through the stillness of the forest like broken glass. So mournful, it feels less like a scream and more like a death sentence. Locals say, if you hear it, you don't run. You don't scream. You don't even breathe. Because the banshee has already chosen who won't live to see the dawn. The fog was heavy that night in the Appalachian backcountry. The kind of fog that swallows the beam of a flashlight hole, leaving only a dull glow in front of your boots. The trees stood tall and unmoving, their dark silhouettes rising like sentinels. A group of hikers, 3 friends from out of state, were setting up camp near an abandoned fire road. They had heard stories of coyotes, of black bears, even of moonshiners still living deep in the woods. But not one of them had ever heard the word banshee before. At least, not until an old man at the gas station warned them. "Don't camp near Coldwater Hollow," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Something cries out there at night. Ain't no woman, ain't no animal. It's the banshee. Mark my words." They laughed it off. Tourist bait, they thought. Another backwoods ghost story meant to scare outsiders. But as midnight neared, laughter faded, because through the thick fog and endless quiet came a sound that froze every one of them where they stood. It wasn't close. At first, it sounded far, like someone screaming on the next ridge over. High-pitched, long trembling, the kind of cry that makes your stomach sink because it carries pain, loss, grief. The 3 froze. They looked at each other. "Probably a bobcat," one whispered. But the others knew better. Bobcats screech. Coyotes yip. This was something different. The cry came again. Closer this time. Almost as if it had leapt across the trees in seconds. One of them shined his flashlight toward the sound, but the fog smothered the beam. Nothing but a wall of gray. The air grew colder. So cold, they could see their breath pouring out in ragged clouds. One friend swore he felt something brush past his shoulder, though nothing was there. The legend goes that the Appalachian Banshee does not simply appear. She announces herself with her wail. And if you hear it once, she's warning you. If you hear it twice, she's chosen you. And if you hear it a 3rd time, death is already on its way. The hikers didn't know the rule. They didn't know they had already heard her twice. And the 3rd cry was about to begin. But before it did, the forest went silent. Unnaturally silent. No crickets, no owls, no rustle of leaves. Just the fog pressing in from all sides and the sound of their quickening breaths. Then it came, the 3rd cry, louder than before. So close, it felt as if it came from just beyond the tree line. One of the hikers dropped his flashlight. The beam hit the fog, and for half a second, just half, they swore they saw something move in the mist. A figure, tall, thin, draped in pale white. But when the light flickered, it was gone. They didn't sleep that night, and by morning, only 2 of them walked out of the forest. The 3rd was never seen again. The Appalachian Mountains are old, older than the country, older than the towns that dot their ridges, and older than the families who've lived in their valleys for generations. With that age come stories, whispered warnings, tales of things that walk in the dark or cry in the fog. The banshee is one of them, but unlike other legends, her story doesn't stay in one place. From West Virginia to Kentucky, from the hollows of Tennessee to the ridges of North Carolina, people claim they've heard her voice, a sound that travels on the wind, never belonging to one town alone. One of the earliest tales comes from the 1800s, when a coal camp deep in the mountains suffered a mine collapse. Dozens of men were trapped inside. Some claim that the night before, a strange cry had echoed through the hollow. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. The wives of the miners said they woke to the sound of a woman's wailing in the distance. They searched their cabins. They searched the road. No one was there. By dawn, the mine had collapsed, burying their husbands alive. And the wailing never came again. In another account, A family living on a remote farm heard the sound outside their cabin one winter night. It was January, snow covering the fields, smoke curling from the chimney. But the mother woke to a voice, high-pitched, crying. Not outside the house, but right at the window. She swore she saw a pale face pressed against the glass. Sunken eyes, mouth open wide, and then it vanished into the snowstorm. By morning, her youngest son had died in his sleep. No illness, no wound, just gone. The neighbors whispered what she already feared. The banshee had come. Locals say she's not always seen. Sometimes it's only the sound. Sometimes it's the sudden cold. Sometimes it's the silence that follows her wail. But when she is seen, witnesses describe the same thing. A tall, thin figure, hair like tangled weeds, skin pale as moonlight, draped in white or gray rags that ripple in the air, even when there is no wind. Some say her face is beautiful, but twisted in grief. Others claim it's nothing but a hollow skull, screaming into the night. What makes the banshee so feared isn't just her appearance. It's her message. She doesn't chase her victims. She doesn't claw or strike or attack. She warns. Her cry is always a prophecy of death. But here's the question no one agrees on. Is she causing it, or is she mourning it before it happens? Some Appalachian elders believe she's a restless spirit, bound to the mountains, doomed to announce each soul taken by the land. Others insist she is far older than that, a creature tied not to one family, but to death itself. Either way, the rule is always the same. If you hear the cry 3 times, someone will not survive the night. A ranger in the Smoky Mountains once told his own story. He was on patrol, hiking a trail at dusk, when he heard it. The cry, long piercing, it echoed through the trees, bouncing off the ridges like a woman calling for help. He radioed for backup, thinking a hiker was lost. But his partner warned him to stay put. "You don't go chasing voices out here," the man said. "Not unless you want to disappear yourself." The ranger didn't listen. He followed the sound, and though he swore he never found a soul, the cries kept pulling him deeper into the forest. By the time he stopped, night had fallen. The trail was gone, and the voice was behind him. He turned with his flashlight. The beam caught the faint outline of a woman standing between 2 trees. Her head tilted back, her mouth open. The wail rang out so loud, he dropped the light. When he scrambled to pick it up, the woman was gone. The next morning, a hiker was found dead on that very trail. The stories spread because they don't just happen once. They repeat, year after year, generation after generation, each one with the same terrible warning. You can laugh at the stories. You can dismiss the old tales. But when the wail finds you in the mountains, it doesn't matter who you are. You've already been marked. The family story began one summer evening in the foothills of West Virginia. A father, a mother, and their teenage daughter had moved into an old farmhouse, handed down from the father's grandfather. It sat on a slope at the edge of a hollow, the kind of place where fog gathered in the evenings and coyotes cried in the distance. The house had stood empty for years. Dust coated the floorboards. Windows rattled when the wind blew, and the trees that had once been cleared for farmland had grown back, pressing close to the house like a wall of green. The daughter hated it from the start. Too quiet, too dark, too isolated. But the father, proud of his roots, insisted it would be their fresh start. The first week passed without incident. They unpacked. They cleaned. They tried to make the old farmhouse feel like home. And then, late one night, the daughter woke to a sound. It was faint at first, a soft cry, carried through the walls. She thought it was her mother, crying in the kitchen. But when she checked, the kitchen was empty. The sound wasn't inside the house. It was coming from a hollow. She went to the window and opened it. The air outside was damp and cool. The fog had rolled in, clinging to the fields like a ghostly blanket. And in the distance, carried through the mist, came the cry, long trembling, unmistakably human. The daughter froze. Her chest tightened. She wanted to call for her father, but something deep in her bones told her not to speak. Then the sound stopped. The next morning, she told her parents. Her father shook his head. "Probably a coyote," he said. But her mother's face went pale. Her mother had grown up in these mountains. She knew the stories, and though she said nothing, her silence was louder than denial. The second night, the daughter heard again, this time closer. She pressed her ear to the wall, her heart racing. The cry wasn't just one voice. It was layered, like two women wailing together, their voices overlapping, echoing through the hollow. She ran to her parents' room. Her mother was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes wide. "I heard it too," she whispered. The father, irritated, muttered about superstitions. But when the cry came again, so close it seemed to rise from their front yard, he fell silent. That night, no one slept. The cries would fade into silence and then return, sometimes far, sometimes near, each time chilling their blood a little more. Around 3 a.m., the mother whispered the rule. If you hear it 3 times, it means death. The daughter counted. They had already heard it twice, and they knew, without a doubt, the third was coming. It came just before dawn, louder, longer, so close it shook the windows of the farmhouse. The father, stubborn and furious, grabbed his shotgun and stormed out into the fog. The daughter begged him not to, but he vanished into the gray, his figure swallowed up in seconds. The wailing cut off, replaced by silence. An awful, endless silence. Minutes passed. Then footsteps returned. The door creaked open. The father stepped inside, pale and shaking, his clothes damp with dew. "I saw her," he whispered. The mother demanded to know what he meant. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. She was standing by the old well. White dress, hair covering her face, just standing there. When she opened her mouth, that sound came out, but her lips never moved. He set the shotgun down, and they never spoke of it again. The following morning, they found something strange by the well. Not footprints, there were none, not clothing or bones, but water spilling over the edge, dark red in color. And before the week was over, the father's brother, living miles away, died suddenly in his sleep. No illness, no warning. The mother said nothing, but her eyes said everything. The banshee hadn't come for them. She had come to mourn him. The banshee is not supposed to stay. She cries, she warns, she vanishes. At least, that's what the old stories say. But in one case, deep in the Cumberland Plateau, the wailing did not end. It began and it followed. 2 cousins, Daniel and Luke, decided to spend a weekend camping near an abandoned logging road. They were locals, born and raised in the mountains, and they thought the banshee stories were nothing but fireside talk. They wanted to prove the legends wrong. The first night, nothing happened. They cooked over the fire, told jokes, and fell asleep under a sky so clear it seemed carved from glass. But the second night, the wail came. It tore through the trees without warning. Not distant, not faint, close. So close, it seemed to rise from the ground beneath their tent. Daniel bolted upright, heart pounding. Luke grabbed the lantern, his hands shaking. "What was that?" he whispered, though they both knew. The cry came again, this time from the ridge above them. A long, sharp wail that echoed and layered, as if the mountains themselves were grieving. The cousins stumbled out of the tent, scanning the fog. The lantern light stretched only a few feet before dissolving into darkness. Then they heard it. Not just the wail, but something else. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, crushing leaves, circling the camp. They spun in every direction. Nothing. Only fog, curling and shifting like it had a life of its own. Then the air grew icy cold. So cold, Daniel's breath came out in ragged clouds. He clutched his chest, as if the cold were inside him. And that's when Luke saw her, a figure at the edge of the lantern glow. Tall, draped in white, her hair long and tangled, hiding her face, her arms hanging lifelessly at her sides. She wasn't moving toward them. She was swaying, back and forth, like someone weeping without sound. Luke dropped the lantern. Darkness swallowed them. And in that darkness, the wailing exploded. It wasn't just one voice anymore. It was dozens, hundreds, a chorus of grief so loud. It felt like the earth itself was screaming. The cousins clamped their hands over their ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just outside, it was inside their skulls, rattling their bones, splitting their thoughts in two. Daniel stumbled to his knees, crying out. Luke tried to pull him up, but his cousin's eyes had rolled back, his lips trembling soundlessly. And then silence. Complete silence. So sudden it made Luke's stomach twist. He turned, and Daniel was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. Luke screamed his cousin's name into the fog, but the sound died instantly, as if the forest swallowed it whole. His chest heaved, his legs shook, and in the corner of his eye, just for a moment, he saw her again. The Banshee, her head bent, her mouth wide, her face pale as bone, and then nothing. By dawn, Luke stumbled out of the forest alone. His cousin was never found. Search teams combed the hollow, the ridge, the trails. No blood, no body, just the tent, just a fire pit, just silence. The Appalachian Banshee does not always take someone directly. Sometimes she warns, sometimes she follows, and sometimes she chooses one soul, plucking them out of the world without a trace. But one question remains. Is she taking them, or is she simply mourning the moment death itself takes hold? Mourning in the Appalachians can be beautiful. Sunlight breaking through fog, birdsong echoing through hollows, the world waking up in shades of gold and green. But for those who have heard the Banshee, mornings never feel the same again, because they remember the silence that came before, the stillness, the air thick with dread, and the cry that marked a life ending. The daughter from the farmhouse still lives in West Virginia. She's grown now, with a family of her own, but she never forgot that summer. And she never forgot the sound that curled through her bones like ice water. When asked about it years later, she didn't tell the whole story. She didn't mention the figure by the well, or the red water, or the death that followed. She only said one thing. When you hear her cry, you know something's already been decided. There's nothing you can do. And maybe that's what makes the Banshee so terrifying. Not her face, not her presence, not even her voice, but the fact that she represents something we can't escape. The one shadow that follows us all. Death. In the Appalachian wilderness, death comes in many forms. A misstep on a rocky trail, a storm rolling over a ridge, an accident deep in a mine, or something darker waiting in the fog. And whether she is a spirit, a curse, or something older than the mountains themselves, the Banshee is always there to mourn it. Some hikers claim they still hear her voice today, a scream carried on the wind long after midnight, a sound so sharp it freezes them in place. Maybe it's the wind, maybe it's a coyote, or maybe it's her, crying for someone whose time has run out. So if you ever find yourself deep in the Appalachian wilderness, and the fog rolls in thick, choking out the stars, if the trees fall silent, if the air grows cold, and if you hear it, that long, piercing wail cutting through the night, don't ask who it is. Don't look for the source. Don't even whisper, because by then, the Banshee is already chosen. The Appalachian Banshee, a legend older than memory, a cry that echoes through mountains and hollows, never changing, never fading. Whether she mourns or warns, one truth remains. When she wails, someone is marked. If you want more tales of horror from the Appalachian wilderness, don't wander off into the fog alone. Stay close. Subscribe for more. And remember, some cries in the night aren't meant to be answered.